may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, in this video I'm going to talk about 5 wide receivers that you need to make sure are in your starting lineup going into week 6. But before we get into the video, I just want to remind everyone, I am very sorry, but I am not going to be able to go live on Thursday night. I will be live on both Friday and Saturday night at 8:30 p.m. Central, so I'll be able to be available then and answer all of your questions, as well as I am going to make a couple videos based off the questions I get through DMs on Instagram. So guys, if y'all are not already, go follow me on Instagram. I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to reply to every single DM. I just probably get anywhere from, if you add up the YouTube comments, Instagram, Twitter, and the fantasy football group chat, I probably get about 500, 600 DMs a day asking questions at the very, very minimum. So there's no way for me to go and reply to all of them. But what I can do on Instagram is I can go through, take 5 questions that I think are kind of close and break them down in a video for y'all that will come out tomorrow. So guys, I will try to remember to include my Instagram on the screen. If not, it should be down in the description of the video and the comments of the video below. But let's get into this video and let's talk about these 5 wide receivers that we want to make sure are in our starting lineup. And let's start it off with a guy that I told y'all to start last week, and it did not necessarily pay off how I expected it to, but Justin Jefferson. Now, we know with Justin Jefferson, he is one of these wide receivers that is kind of operating as a downfield playmaker, and we know that's something we're not necessarily going to be extremely excited about. We are not going to be excited about it whenever they are the third option in their offense. But with Justin Jefferson, I don't think that is the case. I see him very comparable to a player like Will Fuller, where Will Fuller, yes, he is that vertical threat for the Houston Texans offense. He is making those big plays consistently, but the key word there is consistently. I mean, this is a guy that the offense is built around, and I think after the first 2 weeks, when they really realized that they were misutilizing Justin Jefferson, trying to play him as that big slot wide receiver, how he was used at LSU, and similar to how the New Orleans Saints use Michael Thomas. Then they transitioned him outside, peppered him with targets deep down the field, and he has been extremely explosive. But what we have to understand, this is a 21-year-old wide receiver. So yes, there are going to be weeks like week 5 where they go out and just in a smash spot, they don't necessarily put up the production, and we see it all go to Adam Thielen. But I think this is another situation where we can go out there and we can confidently put Justin Jefferson in our lineup, maybe not based on the floor that he has, but based on the ceiling that he has, because going up against the Atlanta Falcons, it's entirely possible that Justin Jefferson goes out there and drops 30 points. I mean, you can see him easily going over 100 yards and getting 2 touchdowns. This is a fantastic matchup. This Atlanta Falcons team, yes, they fired Dan Quinn, but we know that's good for the long-term 2020. We don't know if that's good for their team going into this matchup. So I think with Justin Jefferson, we are going to be trying to load him up in as many lineups as we can. Now, our next player is going to be someone else who has a fantastic matchup. This is someone that y'all know I love. I've been projecting him as a high-end wide receiver 2 in most weeks this year, but I think he can actually put up wide receiver 1 numbers, and this is Devante Parker. Now, there are a couple of good things going in Devante Parker's favor. One, just the insane amount of targets that he's been seeing in Miami so far. I know that we actually saw Preston Williams get some more usage in week 5 against the San Francisco 49ers than he saw earlier on this season. I think this will be something to monitor because maybe we saw the usage just not quite be there for Preston Williams early on because he was still coming back from that torn ACL. But it's been almost a full year since that ACL was torn, and I think we could now see him kind of start to emerge in this offense. But still, that's not where we are at right now. Where we are at right now is with Devante Parker, who is continuing to go on a tear in 2020, just how he ended off 2019. We know that Devante Parker was actually the wide receiver 2 in 2019 in the second half of the season, and that's wide receiver 2 overall. So I think we are going to continue to expect Devante Parker to put in low-end wide receiver 1 production in these smash spots that he has in the easy parts of his schedule, such as the New York Jets. So with Ryan Fitzpatrick going out there and firing on all cylinders, with Devante Parker looking like this alpha X wide receiver, and on top of that, they have a great matchup against the New York Jets this week. I think it's a no-brainer. Go out there and make sure you have Devante Parker in your lineup. Now, our next player is going to be someone that y'all know I have been telling y'all to go out there and start every single week in 2020. He's had one disappointing week, and that was back in week 3 against the Kansas City Chiefs. But outside of that, he has been a major success for us so far, and this is Hollywood Brown. Now, Hollywood is going up against the Philadelphia Eagles this week, which is not necessarily the best matchup you could ever dream for, but still, we know this Eagles secondary is a weak point on this offense, and what's been very, very interesting so far in 2020 is seeing that this Baltimore Ravens team is going out there, and instead of using Lamar Jackson just running the ball everywhere, I mean, in these close games, they are letting him air it out. They're kind of playing it safe and trying to get their passing game developed. And this is going to be something that's extremely, extremely beneficial to Hollywood Brown, who we know, I mean, he is a guy that's always going to be efficient with the targets that he sees because he is operating as that deep playmaking wide receiver. I mean, but this is different than a Darius Slayton. This is different than a Michael Gallup. I mean, y'all know those guys we are trying to stay away from. With a player like Hollywood Brown, who's playing on one of the best offenses and just the best organizations in the NFL, as well as his just overall talent level, I think that this is a player we can continue to expect that in these plus matchups, if Lamar Jackson keeps this passing volume up, we could end up seeing him have a low-end wide receiver 1 season. I know we're not going to expect that every single week because he is going to be very volatile. I think that we are going to eventually see Hollywood Brown finish as a top 3 wide receiver any given week now, just for the week, because we know he has that massive spike week potential. Just like we talked about with Justin Jefferson, we are not going to be surprised if Hollywood Brown goes out there, catches 6 balls for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's entirely possible. And the worst thing ever is if you would have Hollywood Brown on your roster and he goes out there and has that spike week and he is on your bench and then you were just chasing that production all year. I mean, guys, Hollywood Brown is a must-start flex player for me every single week until he shows us otherwise, because the only week that we've seen him really not go out there and perform for us was in week 3 against the Kansas City Chiefs. Outside of that, I mean, this call has really paid off, and we are going to go right back to the well. Okay, now let's get into 2 players that are going to be a little bit deeper here. These are not necessarily quote-unquote must-start guys, but with the bye weeks coming up, with potential COVID games being missed, and on top of that, we know that there are a ton of players dealing with injuries right now. I think that both of these players are intriguing, and let's first start with Christian Kirk. Now, we know with Christian Kirk, so far, I have hated the way he's been used in this Arizona Cardinals offense. We thought that he was actually going to be kind of used as the slot wide receiver. We thought Larry Fitzgerald would be phased out of this offense. DeAndre Hopkins would be that target hog X wide receiver, and Andy Isabella would stretch the field. Well, that has just not happened whatsoever. They cannot push Larry Fitzgerald off the field for whatever reason. Does not matter how ineffective or how inefficient that he is. They are still using Larry Fitzgerald mainly in this slot role. They are using Christian Kirk to stretch the field and DeAndre Hopkins as that X wide receiver. And I know we are generally not going to want to go out there, and we do not want to play these just field stretching type wide receiver 2s. But when we are looking at Christian Kirk, he is going up against the Dallas Cowboys this week. And y'all know last weekend, we told y'all to go out there and start Darius Slayton, a very similar type of wide receiver in terms of how they're being deployed right now as Christian Kirk. Ultimately, I think Kirk's going to be a much better underneath guy, but I think we are going to end up having to see Larry Fitzgerald leave this offense before he gets that opportunity. But regardless, going out there and seeing Darius Slayton have the exact game that we expected from him in week 5 against this horrendous Dallas Cowboys defense, I think we can expect something similar from Christian Kirk, because what I love about Kyler Murray is he has the capability to go out there and keep the Arizona Cardinals competitive in every single game. And Andy Dalton, I've said this so many times this week, is more than just a regular backup quarterback. We've seen him be successful before. We've seen him actually be a top 5 fantasy quarterback before and have just some kind of MVP chatter discussed around him back in Cincinnati when he had Tyler Eifert, AJ Green, and Marvin Jones. So I think we are going to end up seeing Andy Dalton keep this offense afloat. I think this game could get into a shootout. Both of these teams have subpar defenses and just great weapons in general. Okay, our last player that we are going to be talking about is someone that you probably have on your bench right now but are not necessarily excited to play. And I'm willing to tell you that, guys, he has a massive, massive spike week potential in him, and we just have to see him go out there and get the targets. And this is Mecole Hardman. Now, with Mecole Hardman, I know you're not necessarily going to be able to go out there and bench a guy like Will Fuller to start him, but I just want to bring him up because I think I have not gotten one question so far in regarding start-sit Mecole Hardman, and I want to reiterate, guys, Sammy Watkins is going to miss some time with this hamstring injury. We should see Mecole Hardman come in and get a spiked level of usage. He should be an every down offensive player for this Kansas City Chiefs offense. We know how much value that holds in itself. On top of that, we know how electric and how athletic Mecole Hardman is. He does provide that big play ability, and so far in 2020, he's mainly just been used as a special teams player, and then sometimes comes in on offense. But now, without Sammy Watkins this last week, once he left with his hamstring injury, we actually saw Mecole Hardman slide right into that role as just an every down player for this Kansas City Chiefs offense. And now going up and playing the Buffalo Bills this week, I think we could actually see a game that looked very similar to the Las Vegas Raiders Kansas City Chiefs game last week, where this game has shootout potential. But thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed the video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, please make sure you go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, I will talk to y'all Friday night.